reading the gospel, miracles can make a life of faith very difficult for an average Christian like me. Who among us has not prayed for a miracle at some point in time in our life? Who hasn't asked for a sign that God is working to set things right in a world gone wrong? You see, I am no longer able to read this gospel passage without thinking about that family. It wasn't fair that she should die. She was getting better. She was being discharged. See, I want miracles today that look like those of Jesus and his disciples. Psychologists tell us that we live with certain core assumptions about the world, that the world is benevolent, bad things will not happen, and that the world is meaningful, that events in the world should make sense. And we believe that our self is worthy, that events in our world will correlate to the good or the bad that we bring into the world. At first glance, most of us might argue that we are certainly smart enough to know that the world is not fair and that sometimes tragedy follows no line of reasoning. Yet, in that moment, when our world comes crashing in around us, very often, one of the very first questions that rises up from our lips is, how could this happen? Why did this happen to me? What did I do to deserve this? The widow of Nain surely had to be thinking this. She was walking to the place where she would bury her only son. Although surrounded by a great crowd, she was utterly on her own. You see, I can imagine the wails that came from her lips. The widow was not looking for Jesus. She asked nothing of him. Jesus saw her, and he was filled with compassion. This scene reveals Jesus' compassionate character. Jesus meets our needs, even when we are too torn apart to be able to ask for help. Jesus performs this miracle at great risk to himself. As a Jewish male, he will become ritually unclean if he touches a dead body. Now, that might not seem so important to you, but being ritually unclean separated you from the community. As a Jewish male, he should not associate with a widow who he is not related to. Social, cultural norms. And really, if Jesus doesn't want to draw attention of the authorities to himself, he shouldn't be raising dead people to life. Jesus' actions are not about drawing attention to himself. His actions were for this woman, and to point to his Father, who has given him all authority. Sometimes our prayers are answered answered with the miracle we asked for. And in response, we glorify God with praises of thanksgiving. But all too often, healing does not happen in the way that we have asked for it. Accidents and natural disasters occur. Relationships break down. And the diagnosis doesn't get better. Miracles are among the first signs that we look for proof of God's compassion, that God will bring order back into our world. The miracle comes when we trust that God is there with us in the midst of the chaos that threatens us. Jesus' compassion touches our pain-filled places and restores our shattered hearts. Our summer sermon series is based on the theme present tense. With a present tense command, Jesus speaks to the dead man, "Rise up." The Son of God spoke, and it was. Healing, restoration, new life. This is what Jesus offers in the present tense. We know the promise of the future tense, of that new life in the fullness and presence of God, but now, right now, Jesus is offering the same in this world. Not in fullness, not in completeness. He's offering it now, that we can be transformed now. Can we imagine healing, restoration, and new life now? For ourselves, for our loved ones? Can we trust that Jesus has all authority over our lives? That Jesus speaks words of healing and new life? And life becomes what Jesus speaks. We do live in a messy world where bad things happen to good people. Can we recognize miracles that come in less dazzling forms? When we focus on only one vision of what is possible, we become blinded to the many moments in which God's compassion reaches into our lives to hear, to touch, and to stand in the chaos of life, helping us to find new meaning even in the greatest tragedy. A few minutes ago, I was giving you an introduction to Galatians reading, and I explained that Paul was giving his testimony, explaining how he was called into Jesus' ministry and the authority given to him in Jesus' name. And it was as if Paul had been hit by a truth that he didn't see coming, a truth he was not seeking, that seemed to come out of nowhere, an awakening. Jesus' love and compassion, inspiring response and action. Jesus enacted a massive awakening in and through me that night years ago. Jesus gave me the courage to be vulnerable